afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I hope that you are all having a fantastic one out there. Listen, today, I gotta turn off my speaker, sorry for the noise. Today, I felt like listening to something a little weird, to be honest. And we had, not recently, but like, you know, in the somewhat recent past, listened to some Chelsea. And so, or Chelsea is how his name was pronounced. And so a lot of you had recommended also checking out Xenakis, another composer. Let's see, his full name, Xenakis. So I looked up I just searched his name on YouTube, and this is the first piece that came up, Metastasis. So it looks like it's going to be one of his more popular works. Listen, sometimes I like to just listen to like just random, experimental stuff. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but you're never going to know if you don't try. That's the point of experimentation. So I'm excited to dive into this one. Let's see. I see that there is a live video, but just because of copyright and such, I just got out of the copyright strike from the last one. I'd rather not risk it right now, but I may take a look at it briefly afterwards. But for now, I'm pulling up the audio. We'll discuss it as it goes. Metastasis. It's like the THX sound. I love the visual, by the way. Look how it changes to the rapid cuts. Sounds like a battle of brass. It's like raindrops on big strings. Get a little rhythm of the snare back there. Look at the end visual. Just as it started. Still a whole minute left. I'm just making sure there's nothing else left in the last 30 or so seconds here. Unless there's a final jump scare or something. As it kind of fades out here in the last 20 seconds, I'll just start talking. The piece that we listened to from Chelsea, I'm kind of comparing the two. because they both play and perform in that kind of experimental, abstract form that we hear as well here. One thing I really liked in Chelsea's piece was the use of the voices and that kind of haunting maneuver that they added into the music. I really thought that was such a strong element in the music here. And obviously or in the music there. Here, of course, that's not the case. We're really just stuck with horns and brass and strings and such. And I think that they do a great job in still creating a tense and slightly chaotic in their own terms kind of atmosphere. And I love the visual here and the notes kind of describing what's happening. When I look at the title, of course, Metastasis, I think, stasis, stuck in one place, frozen in one place in time, perhaps in a sense, and meta, something kind of outside of, I guess you could say, the seen world or outside of your perception. So it's kind of like something staying still outside of our the sensual world, in the sense of like the world that we can see, taste, feel, hear, etc. So even the music kind of captures it. If you look at the visual here, in the beginning, you have kind of like, I know like everything is moving in the music, but in the beginning you almost have that stasis. And in the middle, you have a lot of movement that's happening. It's almost like atoms and molecules that are being thrown around and moving back and forth inside of a specific wall. And then the track ends in the same way or in a similar manner as it began, kind of revisiting that stasis. So it's a nice way of bookending the track, kind of showing a perception of being frozen in time and yet still giving some movement in the middle. Because even in this section in the bottom, under macro, it says order to complex to disorder and then order again. So we even get a progression that happens in the music, not just audibly, but of course, even in the notes, from, something that's a little bit more orderly into something that's a little bit more discordant and chaotic and seemingly at random odds. I thought the intro and the outro were the best parts of this track. I really love this fade in from the deepest depths of the strings, and even when the horns began to come in, they would blow as if from some deep, distant canyon, and they just had a baritone, deep voice, near guttural, that they just kind of shouted out with. I thought that was really cool. And of course, a similar way to how it ended. The middle sections, I will say particularly on this section here, I didn't care for that much because it seemed like it was too back and forth, and I didn't enjoy it. I didn't dislike it. Like, I didn't hate it. It was, honestly, it just bored me, I guess is the best way to describe it. It wasn't good. It wasn't bad. It just bored me when it got to this particular section, just because it was the strings and this and then that, and they just kept bouncing back and forth to it. And I'm just like, okay, that's fine, but make something. So I really enjoyed, as we got into this whole section here, I loved this a lot. This was beautifully chaotic. As we move into this section here, wonderful. The way it almost sweetens the deal, gives us a little bit of melody inside of this particular hurricane. And like, it still went into those chaotic moments, just in a different way. I thought all this was really fantastic. This was wonderful. This is when it kind of starts off these collisions, I guess you could say. But by the time it got into here, I'm just like, it's just like little spark of music, spark of music. And I didn't really care because it just sounded like, it went back and forth so quickly between all the instruments, it bored me. Whereas I like to stick with something in some capacity for a little bit. So yeah, this, like it. This, like it. This, dislike it. This, like it. That's the best way to describe my feelings on this particular piece of music. I am rather curious. I'd like to see, while we're here, why not, what other people said. If I had a time machine, I would make Bach listen to this. When I learned about musicians such as Xenakis, Penderecki, and Ligeti, and listened to the music, I learned that not all music exists to please everyone. And in many cases, it's not even meant to be liked. It's meant to be listened to, studied, and thought about. 100%. I agree with that 100%. A real toe tapper. I'll be whistling this all week. What's interesting is not that it's atonal or doesn't have riffs or song structures, but it was darn catchy when it came out. Really? Would radio stations actually play this? This is intense. I got the mushrooms. What have I done? This would definitely, I feel like this is what the images of biblically accurate angels sound like. I can see why math is a nightmare for some people. Let's look at the information here on this particular track. All right, it's an orchestral work for 61 musicians. His first major work, written in 53 to 54 after his studies with Oliver Messiaen, and is about 8 minutes in length, premiered at the, okay, let me try this one, Donaueschingen Festival with Hans Rosbaud conducting. Originally, it's part of a trilogy entitled Anastasia, but was detached by Xenakis for separate performance. All right, it requires an orchestra of 61 players with no two performers playing the same part. It was written using a sound mask technique in which each player is responsible for completing glissandi at different pitch levels and at times. Glissandi. Gliding from one pitch to another. Okay, so maybe that's why in the part that I didn't particularly care for, that's where they kind of go back and forth. Maybe? A ballet was choreographed to this, huh? Premiered in 68. I remain quite curious. The Greek digraph is pronounced I in modern Greek, and correct French translation, metastasis. According to the composer's own description, meta means after, stasis, a stand or a state of standstills, dialectic transformations. The metastasis are a hinge between classical music and formalized music, inspired by a combination of the Einsteinian view of time and Xenakis' memory of the sounds of warfare. Well, like I said, Battle of the Brass. Remember when I said that during? Absolutely. Xenakis wished to reconcile the linear perception of music with a relativistic view of time. In warfare, as Xenakis knew it through his musical ear, no individual bullet being fired could be distinguished among the cacophony. But taken as a whole, the sound of gunfire was clearly identifiable. The particular sequence of shots was unimportant. The individual guns could have fired in a completely different pattern from the way they actually did, but the sound produced would still be the same. You gotta admit, man, that is so creative and so, that takes a different way of thinking. And then he goes on to talk about, oh God, physics and such. And while most traditional compositions depend on strictly measured time for the progress of the line, using an unvarying tempo, time signature, or phrase length, metastasis changes intensity, register, and density of scoring as the musical analogs of mass and energy. So it's almost like a physics experiment in music. Oh man, it goes on. Fibonacci sequence, geez. Xenakis, an accomplished architect, saw the chief difference between music and architecture as that, while space is viewable from all directions, music can only be experienced from one. The preliminary sketch for the track was in graphic notation looking more like a blueprint. I'm assuming that's what we were looking at. In fact, the design ended up being the basis for the Philips Pavilion. Do you think we can find the ballet of this? Xenakis Metastasis ballet. Now, I don't know if it's the ballet. I don't think it's the ballet that premiered. But I found something. Nah, it's not. I don't think it's the right thing. Never mind. It's not. So I don't think I can find that. So that might. That won't work. Here's a little bit of the actual live performance here. We're not gonna watch it because copyright. Oh my God, that's loud. That must be really difficult to perform in many ways. That's music is so interesting, isn't it? Let me know what you guys thought of it, of course, in the put this away. Get that out of here. I forgot to mention even who've mentioned. I apologize. I forgot to mention some of you that hadn't recommended Mr. Xenakis. John, 1951, Romaine, Bernard, Butner, Sasha, Paul Martin, you mentioned this as well. Sasha, I see you again. Mr. Wondrous. For Ride. SK. I want to make sure I gave you guys proper due. I forgot to mention that. Let me know what you guys thought of it, of course, in the comments down below. As always, I appreciate you watching. Have a wonderful rest of your day, your evening, your afternoon, and I will see you all tomorrow. Bye, guys.